What if the very idea of good and evil is a construct, one that limits our potential and stifles our individuality? In a world that often imposes binary choices of right and wrong, could there be a deeper, more authentic way to live? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most provocative philosophers of the modern era, radically challenged traditional notions of morality in his seminal work, Beyond Good and Evil. Nietzsche's philosophy forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about ethics, selfhood, and how we define meaning in our lives. In a time where societal expectations and moral codes often feel confining, Nietzsche's insights offer a blueprint for a more liberated, authentic way of being, one that allows us to live with greater self-awareness, courage, and individual strength. Nietzsche did not simply ask us to question authority or cultural norms. He urged us to create our own values, to rise above the imposed constraints of good and evil, and to define our own paths with courage. So, how can Nietzsche's radical philosophy of transcending traditional morality help us live more authentically in today's world? How can we move beyond the rigid dichotomy of good and evil to embrace a fuller, freer existence? These are the questions we'll explore today. Before we dive into the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy, I want to take a moment to welcome you to the Unfolding Journey YouTube channel. If you're passionate about philosophical exploration, personal growth, and challenging conventional wisdom, you're in the right place. On this channel, we examine the big ideas that shape our world, ideas that encourage us to think critically, live authentically, and grow into our fullest potential. If you're ready to embrace new perspectives, dig deep into philosophy, and uncover the tools to live a more meaningful life, be sure to hit subscribe and join us on this thought-provoking journey. We're thrilled to have you with us. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche offers a fierce critique of traditional morality, which he believes is built on the flawed assumptions of absolute good and evil. He describes how conventional moral systems, often rooted in religious or societal traditions, have suppressed human creativity, individuality, and strength. According to Nietzsche, these moral systems are grounded in a slave morality, one that favors meekness, conformity, and obedience, while condemning traits like strength, assertiveness, and individuality as evil. Nietzsche's philosophy is not just a critique of religion or conventional ethics. It is a profound challenge to how we understand ourselves. At the heart of his thought is the idea that our values are not handed down to us by society, religion, or tradition. Instead, we must create our own values through self-exploration and the courageous act of self-affirmation. For Nietzsche, living authentically is impossible if we continue to accept imposed moral codes without questioning them. In a world that often tells us what is right and what is wrong, Nietzsche's call to transcend conventional morality is a radical invitation to explore a more liberated existence. But how do we go about doing this? How do we move beyond good and evil to live with authenticity and strength? Central to Nietzsche's philosophy is the idea of the Übermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman. The Übermensch is an individual who has transcended conventional morality and created their own values, free from the constraints of society's expectations. Nietzsche describes the Übermensch as the ultimate embodiment of human potential, someone who is not limited by societal norms, who embraces their own will to power, and who continuously strives for self-overcoming. To understand the concept of the Übermensch, it's helpful to consider Nietzsche's famous dictum, "Become who you are." This isn't about self-fulfillment in the conventional sense, achieving wealth, fame, or social status, but about the deeper task of creating a life that is truly your own. It's about aligning your life with your inner desires, aspirations, and unique abilities, rather than conforming to the values that others try to impose on you. Living authentically, in the Nietzschean sense, means rejecting the herd mentality that tends to define people by their social roles, status, and collective beliefs. To embrace the Übermensch is to realize that we are not bound by society's rigid definitions of good and evil, and that we have the power to create new meanings, new values, and new ways of living. It is through this creative act of self-overcoming that we can transcend the traditional moral categories that have long constrained human development. The Übermensch does not simply live without a moral compass. Rather, they craft their own code of ethics, one that is more in line with their own lived experiences, desires, and strengths. In doing so, they free themselves from the paralyzing grip of external authority, allowing them to express their full potential. One of the key insights from Beyond Good and Evil is Nietzsche's challenge to the binary thinking that underpins much of traditional morality. In conventional moral systems, good and evil are presented as fixed opposites, often with a clear and unquestioned hierarchy. This simplistic dichotomy leaves little room for nuance or complexity, and as Nietzsche points out, it prevents us from truly engaging with the world as it is. Nietzsche asks us to go beyond this binary framework, to question the assumptions that define good and evil, and to recognize that moral judgments are often subjective. In his view, traditional moral systems have been used to impose control over individuals, forcing them to conform to a set of norms that may not serve their true interests. These systems tend to suppress individual strength and creativity, replacing personal expression with rules that are designed to maintain social order. To live authentically, Nietzsche suggests, we must step outside the framework of good and evil, and embrace a more fluid understanding of morality. This doesn't mean abandoning ethics entirely, it means moving beyond simplistic labels and exploring a more nuanced, complex view of what it means to live a meaningful life. Living beyond good and evil requires us to recognize the subjectivity of moral judgments and to acknowledge that values are not absolute, but are shaped by culture, experience, and individual perspective. This opens the door to greater freedom, the freedom to create and define our own ethical code, one that is based on our unique experiences and individual aspirations. It is only through this act of creation that we can begin to live in alignment with our truest selves. Nietzsche's philosophy also addresses the role of suffering in the process of self-realization. Unlike conventional moral systems that seek to avoid or eliminate suffering, Nietzsche views suffering as an integral part of the human experience. For Nietzsche, it is through struggle and hardship that we find opportunities for growth and transformation. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche famously writes, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." This statement encapsulates his belief that suffering can be a source of strength, provided we confront it with courage and resolve. The willingness to embrace suffering rather than avoid it is a key part of the Nietzschean vision of self-overcoming. Living authentically means accepting the full range of human experience, including pain and hardship. Instead of viewing suffering as something to be avoided or eliminated, we can use it as a catalyst for personal growth. By embracing life's challenges and learning from them, we become more resilient, more self-aware, and more capable of living with authenticity. Another critical concept in Nietzsche's philosophy is the idea of eternal recurrence. This thought experiment asks us to imagine that our lives will repeat themselves infinitely, with every action and decision being eternally relived. The question Nietzsche poses is, if you had to live your life over and over again exactly as it is, would you embrace it or try to escape from it? The concept of eternal recurrence is a test of authenticity. If we are to live authentically, we must be able to say yes to life in its entirety, including its suffering, its challenges, and its uncertainties. Nietzsche asks us to live in such a way that we would willingly relive our lives over and over again, embracing every experience and every moment, not in resignation but in joyful affirmation. This is not a call to passivity or fatalism. On the contrary, it is a call to live fully, to take responsibility for our actions, and to affirm the power we have to shape our own destinies. By embracing the idea of eternal recurrence, we are forced to confront the true meaning of our lives and make choices that reflect our deepest values. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy in Beyond Good and Evil invites us to move beyond the limiting categories of good and evil, and to live a life of creative freedom and self-affirmation. To live authentically, we must transcend societal expectations, create our own values, and embrace both the joys and struggles of life as opportunities for growth. By rejecting the binary framework of morality and embracing the complexities of human existence, we can begin the journey of becoming who we truly are, free from the constraints of conventional moral systems. Living beyond good and evil requires courage, strength, and a willingness to confront the challenges of life head-on. It is a path of self-overcoming, where we continually strive to be more than what we were yesterday. Through this process, we can create lives of deep meaning, guided by our own values, and filled with the freedom to be our most authentic selves. If this exploration of Nietzsche's ideas on Beyond Good and Evil resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the Unfolding Journey channel. We dive into philosophical concepts, personal development strategies, and ideas that can help you live a more meaningful, authentic life. Join the journey and let's continue to question, explore, and grow together. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected and be part of the unfolding journey of self-discovery.